Awesome. Okay. So we are live on both channels.
Cool. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome.
Just waiting a couple moments, maybe.
Oh, yeah, turn the volume off.
Mm-hmm.
To get this one here. Well, maybe if you're tracking it on here.
Hi, Rena.
Track it on here.
It's okay. He's got it. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Let's start. I see a wave. Who's that waving? Oh, Rena waved. Hi, Rena. Rena's from World too, but I just started.
Hello, Rena. Welcome.
Let's start. Let's start. I want to just take a big breath in.
Yes.
You want to tell them what we're talking about today?
So we're speaking about the inner child today, and this is part of our Unconditional Love series of live online community conversations. We had a really great conversation last time, and really appreciated how people were really going deep with us and really considering the questions and chiming in with the conversation, and that's really what we want to be doing, is to building community that's consciously cultivating together.
Mm-hmm.
And do you need to plug that in?
Probably.
You can plug it.
Probably.
You can plug
Yeah, you should
it
probably
with
do
this into the
You know, we
computer.
have to keep our electronic devices charged up so that we can do this.
Technical stuff, and then plug the computer into the wall. You can unplug the thing back there.
I've got enough on my laptop to hold it, I think.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, while they're getting all the technical stuff together and everything, that these are discussions, not just between the panel, which is the three of us, but between the community as a whole. So we not only welcome questions, we really want you to ask questions. We hope that you ask questions and that you have ideas and your own opinions, and we would love to hear them. So that's what makes a discussion.
Yeah. So
Let's introduce the concept of the inner child. Let's talk about what it is first, so that we're kind of on the same page.
So the inner child is that part of us that carries the stored emotional charge from, particularly when we're under the age of 7. These stories that we've built up, or ways of orienting towards the world that we've built up from things that happened that we weren't able to resolve at that time. So there's stored emotional charge, and this charge gets re-triggered as we go through life as adults, or anytime after age 7, gets re-triggered, and then it seems like, oh, this pattern always comes up for me, or this feeling always comes up for me, and these are actually opportunities where the inner child is like knocking on the door and being like, here's that feeling that you have a chance again to like just witness and love and resolve just by witnessing and loving, and like allowing that charge to dissipate each time you do that. And it's and so then it gets easier the more that we practice meeting it lovingly, intentionally, with unconditional love. The easier it is to meet these challenging moments. And we definitely still have challenging moments. I mean, before we started, we were all sharing about, where we were today, and coming to this, we had this intention to be here for the conversation, and just what was up for us today. And being able to meet that more and more easily as we have this conscious practice ourselves is one of the benefits of this practice.
Yeah. I definitely want to connect what you said to the practice of yoga, because what came up was when we experience pain in the body, one of our good friends, Leah, says that it's an acronym for pay attention in the now. So our inner child is always in the moment with us and kind of leading us in our healing, or that's how I see it. So in yoga, when we feel tension and we feel something is misaligned, the way that we work through it is if we actually go there. So you actually have to meet that tension and meet that really uncomfortable place in yourself and meet that inner child who is lost or maybe confused and needs your adult self to give it some nourishment and perspective as well. So that's the connection with the concept and the actual physical practice of yoga. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and later one of the things we'll be talking about is like, how do you actually nourish your inner child? So yoga is definitely one of those.
Yeah. The inner child, I think the inner child is like super, super important. The concept of having an inner child is so important because a lot of people don't understand the concept of what it means to have an inner child.
We just heard it.
Yeah. What was that
sound? I think it's outside.
To have an inner child, and for me, I think when I first tried to understand the concept of having an inner child, I was viewing my inner child as someone or something that I was in conflict with.
Yeah.
You know, my inner child was trying to take over,
right.
and I was like, no, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm grown, and everything. And then once I started recognizing that the inner child is in fact within me and a part of me, and started working on how I perceive that concept, the next thing I noticed is that like me and my inner child became totally integrated. There was no difference between the two.
Yeah. Yes.
So it became more like, my inner child says, I'm a grown ass man. You can tell me what to do. My inner child says.
Right, that sounds like inner child. Yeah.
So, it's like, so just the concept of the inner child, is super, super important. So I hope we can all three help everyone find their way to a greater understanding of what their inner child or who their inner child is for them.
Yeah.
We can go into a guided meditation to help ground and center and to have a direct experience of that too. Because, we can talk about this all day, but it's really in having your own direct experience that you really get to know that for yourself. So I always like to start by connecting with the breath. You might like to close your eyes. So feel your breath moving in your body. You can feel as you inhale this gentle expansion, and as you exhale, this soft letting go. Inhaling, feeling expansion. Exhaling, feeling that let go. Just feeling that gentle wave. Feeling also your sitting bones or wherever you're in contact with the surface underneath you. Starting to notice your body settling in. And as you tune in to your breath and its movement, it might start to show up for you what's present in the moment. So there may be some sensation in the body that starts to speak to you. Just notice that with your breath. Also might be aware of thoughts that are showing up, and whatever thought that shows up, you can just kiss that with your breath. Meeting that with your inhale, and then exhaling, not trying to make it go away, not trying to make it stay, just touching it with your breath. And then notice also any emotion that you start to be aware of. Noticing how you become aware of that emotion, and touch that with your breath. Inhaling, just touching what is present, what's showing up for you right now. And exhaling, letting that moment go. And as we're tuning inward with our breath and our awareness, we start to create that space for the inner child to be seen and heard. So this little child, if you haven't practiced connecting with the inner child much or at all, the inner child might be a little shy or unsure about coming out. And you can just hold this welcome or this intention that they're welcome, that he or she is welcome to come and be seen or heard. And this is you. This is a part of you. Maybe you see yourself at a young age. Maybe it's more of a feeling sense. Maybe it's more of a direct knowing sense. Maybe you hear a voice. There's different ways that we sense most easily. So just opening that space for awareness, a really basic level of feeling or sensing. And so it might show up as an emotion. You might become aware of a thought. And in that thought, maybe you can be aware of some very simple thought that it can kind of whittle down to. So, maybe it comes down to like, I'm not doing it right. I'm not good enough. Maybe it comes down to, I don't have enough. There's a lot of stories we tell ourselves, and they come down to very simple stories that can be in like a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old language. Very, very simple. Just noticing the thought patterns that may come up, or maybe there's a judgment of this activity, and see if you can bring that down to the very simple story, a very simple belief that the child is listening to right now. And so whatever you're noticing, just meet that with your breath. There's no right or wrong. There's not any trying to fix it. or make it go away. There's not trying to evoke it more strongly or make it show up. Just whatever's present. Maybe there's not anything clear for you showing up, and that's okay too. So whatever is showing up, just meet that. If you can embrace it with your awareness. You might imagine that this little child, this part of you, is having that experience. And just like a nurturing adult meeting that little child who's upset and just saying, it's okay. It's just what you're experiencing right now. Just embracing that with your breath and your awareness. You might imagine just being there next to the child. Maybe if the child wants a hug, giving them a hug, but maybe the child doesn't want a hug. So just holding space for the child to be however they are in the moment. You might like to imagine that your breath brings in golden sunlight and warmth to meet this inner child, basking the child with golden sunlight and warmth. Breathing out, and that golden sunlight and warmth expands, permeates all through and around the child. And you feel that in yourself too. The child is you. It's part of you, and the child is you. And just taking a few more breaths, whatever is coming up in this moment, meet that with this unconditional awareness, with your breath, meeting this with the golden sunlight and warmth. Whatever's showing up now, meeting this with unconditional acceptance for what is right now. Maybe an emotion, maybe a thought, maybe a sensation. Touching that with your breath, holding this unconditionally loving space for whatever's showing up. And whatever you're noticing, we'll take a couple more breaths like this right now. And start to deepen your breath in your body. Noticing how you're feeling now. Just being aware of your state. How that may be similar or different to when we started this meditation. And becoming aware of the surface underneath you, the sounds around you. And starting to bring some movement to the wrists and ankles. And as you're ready, softly letting the eyes come open. Taking your time. Being really gentle with yourself and with this inner child. And as we continue to converse this evening, you might like to keep this soft awareness. You can come back to that breath awareness to help you connect in with the child. Yeah, so welcome back. Feels much softer, present.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So what came up for you?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
Came up for me. There were some stories about not doing it right, not needing the meditation right, and it needing to fit a certain form, because I've led this over time, and how I lead it has evolved. And then there's been just this, as I was saying, meet what's coming up and just breathe that acceptance into it. There is also this knowing, like, well, how I'm leading it now is just right for now. Yeah.
You can.
For me, it was finding the best insight and finding the right words and finding this compelling way of sharing my experience with whoever's listening.
So you were thinking forward to what you'd be sharing, this conversation, and then having some, maybe the clarity helped you to, is that what you're saying? Finding the compelling?
Just trying really hard.
You found you were trying
to find the right words to say once we're sharing.
Hello, Joy. Welcome.
Hi, Joy. Yeah.
What else came up for you?
I really want to save it for the questions that we're going to be asking everybody, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you?
So for me, there was a lot of mind chatter, and I was like, "Oh, what am I doing right now?" So first of all, why am I everywhere? And then when I did that, I realized that I started giving myself that scrutinizing gaze, and I realized that I was squirming under my own gaze, or is it my inner child squirming under my adult's gaze?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I just sat with that.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, when I truly, scrutinize myself and gaze upon myself, I find a lot of judgment there. And there's a side of me that shies away from it.
Yeah. It's hard to be under judgment.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like that's my inner child. It's kind of just like, wants to just shrink and fall back, and not be seen. But, can't get any real shadow work done like that, can I?
And so you just notice that.
So I'm just noticing it and sitting with it,
Yeah, so it's not fixing it.
No.
And yet it becomes softer or can transform through that, just holding space for it, allowing it. Yeah.
It's like giving a stranger the space to gain your trust, or to just talk and get to know them, to see who they are. It's like after the conversation starts and you realize, you relax because you begin to actually know them, even though it's only a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
And I think we have to take those same baby steps with our inner child.
So now is a really good time to open up the space and start sharing, because like I said, You know, like we said, a lot of our intention is to connect with anyone who joins us. So if you just joined us, we did a meditation to access the inner child and to listen to the inner child. And now the question is, how does the inner child show up in our lives? So how do we know when the inner child has shown up, and how do we navigate that experience? So do either of you want to start answering that question? How?
Is that what you have something to share about?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it, and I want to preface what I'm about to share with the fact that I do go to therapy pretty often, and I will have to say 90% of the time the therapist will stop me completely and ask me to listen to my inner child. So I share that to say a lot of our issues stem from these foundational imprints that Bhaguni was sort of introducing, and that's why it's so important, because a lot of the turmoil that we experience is from that.
I don't think we used the word foundational imprints before. So I just want to say foundational imprints are these, like I was talking about, the stories or the beliefs that we gained under the age of 7.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a foundational imprint.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
So how does the inner child show up in my life? Well, it showed up this morning, or she showed up this morning, because of a disagreement with my own parents. So my inner child reacted to that by talking back. So anytime I realize that I'm like talking back at someone and I'm not actually listening, and they're just trying to support me, help me, give me suggestions, guidance, anything that feels parental, I tend to just push all the way back, and I get really stubborn, and I get really like planted in whatever stance I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way that my inner child shows up, just resisting help, a lot of resisting help. And what that inner child actually wants is help.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what's, I mean, it kind of goes full circle like that, you know, and then because of the disagreement this morning, I didn't want to ask for help for my father to watch my baby so that I could be fully here. And so I really had to meet that as another opportunity to resolve, you know, that, oh, they are here to help me. They do want to help me. And how can I re-enter that conversation knowing that what my inner child wanted was help? So just make that an actual reality, so that I just asked for help, and then, you know, okay, and that was it. And I was like, oh, you know, they are there for me. They do want the best for me. They are watching out. So yeah, so usually it all comes full circle like that.
Yeah. You know, also this reminds me of when I have that resistance, like I don't want to receive help, or I don't want to receive whatever it is that somebody is offering. And then when I like recognize that and give that space, just witness it, the inner child, that when I stop resisting, it actually gives space for clarity to come. And it's like, oh, I was resisting because there's an additional piece of information that needs to be communicated about how I want that help. You know, like maybe the parent, or you know, this person who I'm interacting with, I'm perceiving that they're having a certain belief about what I need, and so I don't want their help because I'm like, well, you don't understand me. And then when I can get that, when I give myself the space to get that clarity, then it becomes simple, because then I'm like, oh, I want there to be this understanding of where I'm actually at, or what I actually need, or, you know, maybe I want this kind of help and not exactly this. Maybe it's just clarity within myself, but sometimes it's communication with the other person. And then I can say that, and then I actually can receive the support from the other person.
Yeah, and it sounds like communication is such a big part of it, how you communicate it, what you need, possibly connecting that to how you communicate needs with your own mother.
Right, because that's our foundational communication. The first people we communicated with, most of us,
Mm-hmm.
or whoever our caretakers were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a lot of us, that was different.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a non-traditional home. I wasn't raised by a single mother. I was raised by a single grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, my inner child still holds on to a lot of stuff, as you said, that happened before the age of 7, even a lot of stuff that happened after the age of 7.
Mm-hmm.
And my inner child acts out when I'm in similar conditions,
Right.
And I'm feeling those old feelings, and it's just like, I believe it's a natural response at this point that I haven't even realized that I've developed this this is my natural response to that situation, and I didn't realize it before, It's only when you really look back and really think about, why am I triggered right now? What really triggered me?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself all the way back to when you were a child, and you're like,
Right.
really? Why? I'm 42. Why is that an issue still?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, God, am I ever going to grow up? Am I ever going to get over this? Am I ever going to get through it, past it? Or
But we all have that in our child. It's part of us.
yeah, and that's what it is. It's the idea that we have to grow up or grow past it,
Right.
or through it,
Yes.
is the issue. We have to embrace it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand it, and we have to get comfortable.
And that's
Yes.
growing up.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So
we have to get comfortable with that situation.
Mm-hmm. So now that we've been able to kind of share how the inner child comes up for us and how we deal with it, it's really time to open up to whoever's here and ask you, how does the inner child show up for you? So that our inner childs can play with each other. And it's funny because that really came
Hello,
up
Danielle.
in meditation too.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Hi, Danielle. So we're talking about inner child and how it shows up for us, and we're inviting people to share as well how their inner child shows up for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized as Tanya was talking that my example had embedded in it one of my inner child's things that shows up, which is they don't understand me.
Mm.
That's a big one.
Yeah. And for me, one thing I've noticed that, like, when my inner child truly comes out and is like in control, in situations where I find myself wanting to be alone, not ask for help, not talk to anybody about anything that's bothering me, because that's what I would do as a child, go sit in my room by
Coping
myself
strategy.
and play with my
Coping
toys.
strategy.
And it's like the best that the wisdom of you at that time, that was the best solution that was available. And that was really wise at that time.
Yeah.
It was.
But a point that we are also making is that the coping strategies that we used when we were 7
Don't work anymore.
don't work. Well, I mean, sometimes they'll work. It's not that they don't work, but it's not always the best way to handle what's going on right now because of the conditions and the circumstances you're in right now.
Right.
Yeah, because, for example, I was talking about resisting and I was talking about talking back. It's like that's my childish behavior. That's what me being childish looks like. But if my parent or if my partner is trying to help me with something and they're directly involved in what I'm trying to do and I'm listening, it's probably not the best way to communicate, So something to note about our coping strategies,
Yeah.
We have a big share here.
What do we have here? So Danielle says that, and I'm going to read this as you wrote it. My inner child always wants to play, usually when I'm dancing or moving in some way or when there is some sort of art involved. Resistance to me definitely looks like silence or pushing away.
Yeah.
That's we've talked about that too. Thank you, Danielle, for sharing, by the way. It's really valuable to us. In terms of like pushing back or being silent, that withholding is so present for me, because I mean, so he's my partner, and sometimes when I get really upset and I'm resisting and I'm like talking back.
Run.
Yeah, no, like we both do our coping strategies, I guess, but like withholding is a big one. I go through this whole plan in my mind, like, oh, I'm gonna be silent until today's Thursday. I'm gonna be silent until Saturday, and I'm gonna see how much I can handle my silence, and I'm gonna see, how he's gonna, what he comes back with, and usually, a couple hours later, like my adult practicing self comes in. It's like, okay, this is not solving anything. But thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of us have that pattern as well.
That one. That's a big one for me. And if people don't understand me, then I shouldn't share things either. Just like you're gonna misunderstand me anyway.
It's so funny, like how intricate this web is of all of these different imprints and all these different coping strategies, like just finding these intersections so that they make sense in our mind, So that's really funny.
My inner child hates restrictions. All of them. Just about anything you can possibly think of. Any authoritative figures that are not my grandmother do not hold much weight. If you're not my grandmama, I don't know what you talking about. Are you telling me to go do something?
Yeah.
I did not work for you.
That's so funny, because we were both raised by grandmothers. So like I don't listen to anyone except my grandmother. So it's just funny,
Yeah.
The commonality. Yeah. Anybody else out there want to share?
Yes. Danielle shared again. She said, yes, my inner child tests the other person to see if they will come and talk to me, acknowledge me in some way, or / acknowledge me in some way.
Oh, wow, that really resonates. The big test, that they don't even know that they're taking. They're just going about their way in the most natural ways possible.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to say that I'm mad. I'm just going to be mad, and they should pick up on this.
Right.
And they should have the proper response.
Right.
And then, a half hour or whatever goes by, something happens, and in my head, I'm like, that was not the proper response.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's just like hands in. You're like, I tried.
Yeah.
But, we put these impossible expectations on the people that we interact with.
Yeah, to know what's going on.
Yeah, to know what's going on. And it's crazy because we do a lot of it in our own head. Like, how are they supposed to have a clue?
Totally. And before I forget to connect it back, this response that you're talking about, this response that it's the should, like they should respond that way, that's simply what we wish our parental figures how they would respond to us or how they would treat us. So what I've learned is the best way is to give that to yourself.
Right.
If you're really trying to get a point across, or try to, if you're trying to get a point across and it's not being received well, or you need to be able to validate yourself. You need to be able to give yourself that. And the only way to do that is to acknowledge that it's the inner child coming up, and that you need to take this very sacred, silent, mindful moment to be like, okay, what is it that I really wanted from this other person, and how can I energetically give it to myself, and usually that kind of brings you back to a fullness, like a wholeness.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's like recognizing what do I really need.
Yeah.
And then and I've been in that place. I wrote about that in the mini newsletter yesterday for many people about this conversation, just being in this like stressed space, and then coming back to these simple practices of like just like nurturing whatever the need is in the moment. And it takes that practice of like creating the space for okay, what do I really need now? You know, like
Yeah.
I'm trying to like get stuff done on the computer and just being like slow and ineffective. And it's like, okay, well, what do I really want right now? And it's not so much a thinking thing. I mean, there can be intellect that's part of it, but it's really a listening in thing. And you know what? And I'll also say that you know, I have that orientation of coming from the inside out. So for me, it's really tuning in. But maybe for, you know, you with centering and you with coming from the outside in, maybe it shows up differently. So that might also be interesting to hear.
Danielle responded, yes, big shoulds. I think that brings me back to the idea of also what I was saying too. So when we think about how we act out, our inner child acts out through us. We think that the idea of dealing with our inner child again is you know, all right, you know, chastising the inner child. We don't do that no more. We're an adult now. This is how we handle this, and that's not what our inner child needs. Our inner child is there no matter what. They're not going away. If you have found a way to do away with your inner child, you have a much bigger problem than what we're discussing here today. The idea is to take your inner child by the hand, walk with them, protect them, nourish your inner child, help your inner child get over his or her fears, and not to be so judgmental.
Yeah. It's a sweet image. One of my favorite teachers who actually I learned about the inner child from first, his name is Gary Springfield, and he talked about when he was really doing a lot of work with his inner child and healing himself, that he would like sit with the inner child in his lap and just drive. And then like sometimes he'd be like going around in life and like the inner child would be like a scared little kid like in between his legs. You know, just like this image of the inner child being there and like creating that space for the child to be however they are in the moment.
Yeah, like the presence of the inner child is always there. That's what I got from that. Like the inner child's always there, you know. And that also came up when I was listening to you, because we're caring for the child as if they're our own child. That's how present it really is, you know. So I think it's a good time to segue into the inner child and the holidays. You know, it's December 20th. You know, everywhere is packed. You may or may not have plans coming up to see family, to see people who you've known for a really long time, and that you may not have had the communication skills or the social skills to deal with difficult situations back then, because you had no control, because, you know, you have to behave a certain way around your family, or you can't say certain things, or you're expected to be certain ways. So then the question is, how do you nourish your inner child during the holidays, during this very hectic time?
I want to bring up too that there's kind of these two dual modes around this season. That there's that the like very busy and connecting with people who maybe you don't usually connect with in your daily life, and that can be uncomfortable, or joyous, or both. But there's also this energetic of the season that, you know, we're coming into this quiet stillness before the new year, and it can be like contemplative and reflective and like kind of just stillness as we're preparing to come into this new beginnings, new time period, the new year, as it's also like the darkest and the coldest time, being more inward. So there's like these two themes that are going on. You might experience more one or the other, or you might experience both at different times.
Yeah, it's a balance of the two.
Yeah, there's really both going on.
So nourishing the inner child during the holidays. Does anybody else want to start first?
Nourishing the inner child during the holidays. I think for most everyone that's, being around family,
or community, or maybe the lack of community.
Family can look
or
many different ways, and I
the
think it's really important
For
to see
some
that.
people, another thing that comes up is like what their current partnership relationship is, or I don't have a sweetheart to share the holidays with, or I miss somebody who used to be really close to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of that of wanting connection.
Yeah, connection.
Yeah.
And our relationship to connection, which is very much the inner child stuff, our foundational connecting experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our inner child loves to sit on laps,
Mhm.
play in the sandbox and things like that. So the inner child wants to connect. It wants to be with people who appreciate love and have fun with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what comes up for me when I think of my inner child during the holiday season. Is my inner child wants to connect, and it's interesting because my inner child wants to connect, but then my adult acts out. And it's like it all stems from the from my interesting childhood, and my relationship with my parents and my grandmother and with the rest of my immediate family. I always wanted the connection as a child, but I never got it.
Mhm.
And I think the adult in me resents that. Although the inner child is still reaching out and trying to connect. So, yeah, so there's a class there. So every time my inner child shows its head, it's not always an adverse thing or a bad thing, So our inner child has many, many faces and aspects, just as we do ourselves and our adult selves, And yeah, that's one of the good sides right there, is that my inner child always wants to connect with people.
Hmm.
Especially during the holidays, because people have food. Good food. So what about you?
What about me?
What about you?
Yeah, I was being aware of this, like a theme from my childhood is not connecting, maybe in a different way. Like there's a lot of security, and safety, and like, the parents are there for me, but there's a certain level of connecting, like the emotional connecting, and like the spiritual acknowledgement, beyond like the physical or the mental, that I really wanted, didn't even know that I wanted. And also it's kind of like this pattern of being very like just keeping with the core, that like, the very nuclear family, or not kind of spreading out farther. And so there's kind of this pattern that I can go into of I'm too busy to connect with all these other people. I'm too busy, it's too much to like connect with all these other people, or I don't want to share like what's really up for me. I'm too busy, pretend that I'm too busy to like really connect more deeply with people. I see how that's shifted a lot lately, and it's a lot more my norm to really share authentically what's up, but I definitely see that come up, that theme.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yours is similar to mine, but it's the inner child who's not wanting the connection.
Yeah, well, the inner child does want the connection, but the inner child also, it's like, it's kind of like, well, maybe it's I'm going to reject you first. You're not going to give me, I'm not going to give you that. So like, I'm not I'm not going to even talk to you. I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm great.
Mm.
Mm. Sounds like the inner child is afraid of being rejected, maybe not receiving that connection.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to try.
I see that child right now.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah, and there's that key word of authentic too.
right.
Just being authentic with where you're at and what you need, and being authentic with anybody, anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, and and there's and that doesn't have to mean that we're like anybody that we walk up to on the street that we're like, oh, I'm feeling this in my heart right now.
No,
It's a very there's wisdom in how we communicate that and how we carry ourselves in the world. But it's having that space to be authentic with ourselves, and then having the space to share as is appropriate in that connection, as is supportive to whatever our intentions are.
Yeah, as appropriate it is in that space.
Yeah, and really according to what our intentions are.
Totally.
Like if this is somebody that I really want to sit down and talk with, as opposed to if this is I'm just walking by on the street.
Yeah.
I don't intend to like create a whole connection with them.
Yeah. Okay, shares?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple shares. I was waiting for a chance to get in there. Danielle said that I guess nourishing the inner child during holidays for me is reflecting and asking inner child what they need, / spending time alone with inner child.
Yeah, really great how that really reflects what you were talking about too, and how there's like a balance between going in and being with ourselves, as well as being out and then listening in. Thanks for sharing, Danielle. Before I forget as well, what came up while you were both talking is being authentic in an appropriate way. And I never really put those two things together before, but at like a holiday party with your family, if you're used to being really different from your family, sometimes it's not the best time to share your deepest reflections or these like out of the world visions that you've been getting, or what your tarot card spread was this morning, whatever. I'm kind of guilty, Danielle, here.
Unless your family is gypsies.
Unless you're that aligned with your family. But I really learned that when I'm with my family in like a family party or something, there's definitely like a dance that you can do in terms of being authentic, but also being present and meeting people where they're at. Yeah. And I think it's really important to know where you are authentically as a starting point, and then paying attention to your space and seeing where that is, and then kind of doing that dance so that you don't feel like, oh my God, I'm just getting really overwhelmed because I can't relate to anybody to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of the holiday angst.
Yeah.
To like really meet that, we come from different worlds, who we are now, to meet that like, yeah, here's you, here's how we can meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes from curiosity too. Yeah.
Yeah. I just keep having this vision of like, just, walking over to my inner child, taking him by the hand. Come on, we're good.
Yeah. We need to just check. Yeah.
It's 8:06 actually. We should be wrapping up.
Yeah, to respect everyone's time, because we were trying to continue it between 7 and 8.
And we did start a little bit late.
We did start a little bit late. We do want to take this really last chance to see if anybody wants to share anything that came up for them really quick. And in the meantime, while we just keep the space open, we wanted to give a couple reminders before we mindfully close. So our next live conversation is 2 Thursdays from now, on Thursday, January the 3rd. And the topic is going to be setting New Year's intentions. with unconditional love.
Yeah, or I would say holding them with unconditional love.
Or
That
holding
might
your
be
New
probably
Year's
separate.
resolutions with unconditional love. Yeah, that'd be a cool topic to see what everybody's goals are and kind of create the right environment for it, you know? And stay connected, like our Facebook page, it's Perna PCA. And also, if you're interested in signing up for our newsletter, we put out newsletters every month. And sometimes we do like these mini newsletters with resources, teachings, practices, and just updates. So if you'd like to, you can write your email address in the comment box, or you can direct message us and we can add you to that newsletter. So with that, I think we can just, if you want to walk us out, do you want to,
With the meditation?
with the closing, just a mindful closing.
I don't have an idea.
It's okay.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thank you. So
So
we're all capable. Of
Yeah.
doing it.
So I think the point that we really want to drive home today is the concept of the inner child. The inner child is ever present, has been since we were a child. And the inner child lives within us with the same fears that our inner child had when we were a child. And we have to show our inner child more compassion. We have to reach out to our inner child and embrace our inner child along with all of his or her fears and iniquities and shortcomings or awesomeness, however, whatever. We have to embrace it all. We have to walk with our inner child. We have to understand our inner child. We have to talk to our inner child and listen to our inner child. And when I say listen, I think you guys, some of you who have been with us for a while know I mean intentionally and with unconditional love. Truly listen, truly hear. Understanding your inner child will help you to understand yourself. So connect with your inner child.
Yeah, and so let's take a couple deep breaths and kind of end together, just sitting up nice and tall, gently closing the eyes, feeling the spine stack, and just feeling the breath coming in through the nose and out through the nose. In and out, in and out. Placing both hands on our heart, connecting inwards, thanking our inner child for coming out to play and for sharing, and thanking our present selves for meeting the inner child in this moment. Breathing in and exhale, releasing. Gently blinking the eyes open when we're ready. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We hope to hear from you soon. If anything comes up in the meantime, our inbox is open.
And full of unconditional love.
Namaste.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Thanks
Happy
for joining
New
us,
Year.
and we hope you got something.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you for watching.
I did end the Facebook one. Oh, did I not? It's still going? Oh, and